What up, friends? That's not walkable at all. And today we're going to be reviewing Arctic Monkeys' newest album, The Car. This is the seventh album by English rock band Arctic Monkeys. It's a follow-up to 2018's Tranquility Base Hotel Casino, which was a very stark change in both sound, aesthetic, and ethos for the group. It was a very divisive project overall. However, for me personally, it quickly just rose through the ranks to become my favorite project by Arctic Monkeys, even surpassing Humbug, which was my favorite previously. Tranquility Base's film score-esque sound and aesthetic alongside its witty lyrics had such a fluid and flowing sound to it. And I also really enjoyed how each song tended to be pretty distinct from each other while also fitting seamlessly into the album's overall sound and narrative. Some people might not agree that each song had its own identity, but if you really look at them and really listen to them, I think they're incredibly distinct from each other, and I also really appreciate how listening to that album really just felt like experiencing a whole mini-film from start to finish. The Car sees Arctic Monkeys continuing that aesthetic and philosophy, however taken in a bit of a different direction. Rather than feeling like a soundtrack to one cohesive film, this album feels like 10 different little teasers for different films. It's like 10 separate mini ideas laid out one after the other, for better and for worse. The album opens up with There Better Be a Mirrorball, which is by far the best track on the album. They really put their best foot forward with this one. The lounge-styled piano with those jazzy drum patterns are really serene, and they have that sort of melancholy energy to them as well that really makes the track work. It's punchy, but in a soft way, and I think that dynamic combined with some of Alex's best vocals on the project just create a really cohesive experience. They set the mood well, and so do the lyrics too, kind of depicting a melancholic and kind of nostalgic, bittersweet breakup. However, I find that you can actually kind of interpret the lyrics in another way as well. Alex is describing a schism between the fan base and the band themselves, almost like it's a breakup between the band and its fan base. Alex and the rest of the group are taking their sound in a different direction, and not all fans are on board with it, and Alex is just kind of coming to terms with that fact that he can't please everybody anymore. That culminating moment when the strings come in is by far my favorite moment on the project as well. I Ain't Quite Where I Think I Am is another sort of diversion from the Tranquility-based sound a bit, bringing more funk-driven guitars into the mix alongside a more upbeat instrumental overall. The main vocals and the background vocals harmonize well, and I like how that piano comes into the chorus too. They mesh together well, and I find this track has a very flirty cadence to it that makes it fun to listen to. The lyrics also combine that sort of flirty cadence with a humorous sense of social awkwardness, especially in the lines, "Let's shake a few hands, blank expressions invite me to suspect I ain't quite where I think I am." Sculpture of Anything Goes is another interesting switch-up, featuring a much more dark and subdued atmosphere thanks to the heavy emphasis on the drums and the sci-fi sounding synths. It seriously sounds like the dark underbelly of a cyberpunk dystopia or something. The gradual escalation of the instrumental provides some pretty great suave tension, and I find the vocals to also be very haunting yet cocky as well. They also really seem to be poking fun at the backlash to Tranquility Base's sound change, like in lines, "Puncturing your bubble of relatability with your horrid new sound, baby, those mixed messages ain't what they used to be." It really just kind of reinforces this song's aesthetic, I think. Jet Skis on the Moat is pretty decent, featuring that funky guitar coming back once again, but I find the vocals on this track to be kind of underwhelming. For a decent few of the tracks on this project, Alex just kind of refuses to go into his lower registers, which makes some of the songs kind of lose their impact. However, the piano is elegant, and the lyrics have this moody aesthetic to them that matches the song's sludgy haziness as Alex asks his lover if there's something on his mind, and if she'll tell him what it is before the paint job on his car dries. It's a cheeky and fun track, but the delivery kind of hurts it a bit. Body Paint is definitely one of the tracks where Alex's higher register works better though. It also helps that the instrumental on this track is a bit more driving and engaging compared to that of the previous song thanks to the larger emphasis on the synths, bass, and strings. It has this vibe of like a mysterious slow dance scene in a film or something, and I like how playful the song gets as the strings pick up as well. It almost reminds me of a period drama or something. Funnily enough, the narrative of this track is essentially Alex's lover in the song is having an affair, and the lyrics are pretty witty in regard to how Alex is basically finding out about this affair at the same time as us, So it's an interesting sort of witty relatability that I think this track does well. It's kind of one thing that I appreciate about modern Arctic Monkeys lyrics and stuff like that, and how they can kind of construct a narrative. The title track though, The Car, is unfortunately a bit underwhelming. The instrumental isn't bad, and I don't think it's a bad track overall, however, it's just kinda staying in one place throughout most of its runtime. It's just a bit meandering, and while the lyrics are fitting for the album's overall themes, I find that I get the impression that I was just kinda thrusted into the middle of a film. Like, I'm in the middle of this circumstance that Alex is describing, but I have no context to it, so it kind of loses some of its emotional impact. The guitar solo was also an interesting addition. It sounds a bit out of place though, I'm not really sure how to feel about it to be honest. Still, I do like these string segments and its somber nature overall. I just feel like it needed a little bit more oomph and variety alongside a bit more contextualization in the lyrics. Big Ideas is another pretty good track, however, I find that it doesn't do too much to separate itself from some of the other ballads on here. The string swell on the chorus, though, is pretty nice, and I find that the lyrics really capture that washed-up performer vibe really well. It's pretty captivating, and I think Alex's vocals on here do a decent job at what they were trying to do. I'm also a pretty big fan of how Alex kind of laughs to himself at times during his delivery, which adds to the track's personality. The guitar solo on this one is also integrated better into the track compared to that of the previous song. However, again, I really do wish the track had more of an identity overall and had more elements to help it distinguish itself from some of the other ballads on here. The next track, Hello You, is back to the great stuff though. I'm loving those synths and strings and the warmer tone on the drums with the addition of the bongos. It's a great touch. The more upbeat pacing on this song helps keep the track flowing and also helps it stand out too. I also find the lyrics on this one particularly interesting as he explicitly goes into both his past and the band's past, kind of looking back on his old life and how he refers to it as a meandering chapter. It really just sounds like Alex is much more confident with who he is and who the band is these days, even if everybody else might not see it as such. He just feels he's more true to himself now, and that growth is part of the experience, even though not everybody will see it that way. There's a great climax, some humor to it. Like, this is a great example of this album at its best. Mr. Schwartz is a bit of a shift, almost being a true acoustic ballad, which you don't really hear a lot from Arctic Monkeys. I find it to be a bit too similar to The Car, though, with largely the same progression as well. To be honest, everything I said about The Car kind of applies here too, so I don't really have much else to say about it. However, I do think the album ends on a really nice note with Perfect Sense. It feels like a quaint and smooth climax of the project and really encapsulates its entire vibe. The strings are delicate and serene, and Alex's vocals are suave and very emotive too. The song has a very nostalgic aesthetic overall, and the lyrics also come into play here, bringing home that wit and mixing it with the warmness of Mirrorball. It's a pretty simple structure actually, just 3 verses on their own, but they really do a lot with it, and they make the song feel a lot more grand than the structure would imply. The lyrics are also a pretty nice introspective moment on the project, with Alex looking back at his past once again, acknowledging the changes and kind of looking forward to where he's going next, and also appreciating how those changes and that growth made him what he is today. I feel like some parts of this album were mainly to up the energy and up the variety to kind of satiate the people that thought Tranquility Base was too samey. However, this kind of makes The Car feel a bit unpolished and unfocused compared to Tranquility Base. Despite still being a good project, I find this lack of focus, alongside some one-note and occasionally off vocals, to prevent this album from surpassing its predecessor. I do appreciate some of the instrumental styles that they added with this record though, like the funk-driven guitars and the string emphasis. The lyrics acknowledging and discussing the backlash to the shift in sound with Tranquility Base, alongside examining the past of both Alex and the band, was also pretty interesting. However, we also have some songs where the lyrics almost feel like we're missing context, like we were thrusted into the middle of a film with no clue on what's going on. They were like mini previews of various films, which is an interesting idea, just maybe not as satisfying as they intended it to be. And ironically enough, some ballads, despite the variety on some of the other songs on the project, felt a bit too samey for my liking overall. Still, I really do like what they're putting down here, and there's no song that I would describe as bad. However, I feel like they need to rein it in a little bit and focus on the cohesion that made Tranquility Base so good. They can still have that new sound, they can still have some variety, but they need to make everything sort of connect to each other better. I feel like they just need more commitment to the sound overall. All that being said though, I am feeling a decent 7 on Arctic Monkeys' The Car. Of course, we do have to talk about album covers on this show, and I love this album cover. I think it fits this album really well. It really does look like a indie sort of indie film advertisement or something. Like, this could be on a Criterion cover, let's be honest. Like, I feel like that's exactly what they were going for. It does have that sort of Tranquility Base aesthetic. However, instead of a futuristic direction that Tranquility Base went for, it's definitely that more grounded, sort of like maybe Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas or something like that, you know, that kind of aesthetic. So I think it works well for what it was trying to do. I think it's really nice. But those are just my thoughts on this newest album by Arctic Monkeys. What did you guys think? Do you think this was actually a step up from Tranquility Base? Maybe a bit more your speed, a bit grittier? Or is a lack of cohesion kind of preventing it from surpassing its predecessor for you? Let me know. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell if you want to take a drive, and until the next one, farewell.